You are now entering Clearview, Illinois. The name of this story is Traffic is Hell. Clearview didn't have traffic most of the time, but ever since construction was being done on a 301, big city traffic was being introduced to a little city. Philip was in that hour sweet spot when he had to deal with it. He had moved out of the big city to get away from annoying problems such as these. So maybe it may have very well been an extra 15 minutes drive. To him, it was evidence that traffic was a fundamental fact of life in this modern day, no matter how he tried to flee from it. The stagnant red brake lights infuriated him, and he swerved off onto the shoulder. If the cops decided they'd want to stop him, so be it. He slipped over to the cramped emergency lane, zooming past the other cars that were moving in slow motion. As the roads compacted, he saw the traffic cones creating a path that led over to a newly created lane. Philip was leery about this shortcut inside of a shortcut, and he actually thought to ease himself back into traffic. Out of nowhere, a roadside worker with a flare so bright it washed out the details of his face appeared. The man became more of a symbol of a workman than a person. Philip slipped past the masses and into a lane that he felt was his, and then into Joshua's tunnel. The tunnel was lit in eerie fluorescent white. The lanes were wider than normal, and the traffic was non-existent. The road was so barren that Philip was starting to believe he had made a wrong turn into a stretch of highway he wasn't supposed to. After a few minutes, he rationalized, as all sane people did. If the roads weren't better, then what the hell was all the construction for? Slowly and persistently, there came the bright headlights of another vehicle creeping up from behind him. Philip sped up. He wasn't in a competition, but when someone attempted to pass him, it brought out the competitor in him. The vehicle behind him must have gotten the same idea, because it didn't matter how fast he went, those bright mechanical eyes kept pace with him. Though it ran counter to his nature, Philip slowed down and switched lanes. He could make out the big body of a truck. The behemoth thundered past him. When he stopped to look over at the driver, all he could see was an indistinct arm which pulled his deep piercing horn as he passed, giving Philip a healthy jolt of adrenaline. He watched as the truck sped off and out of the tunnel into the all-consuming light. The light was bright and unfamiliar. He cursed himself. He knew it was too good to be true. He had went the wrong way. This was why this stretch of land was so unfamiliar to him. He frantically found another turnoff and went back, knowing that he was going to have to face the traffic again. On his way back, there was an eerie stillness that washed over him. No cars once again, which gave him the tinge of fear he was lost. Philip saw the ominous glow of headlights he had never seen before. They emitted a brilliant orange glow. He slowed the car down so he could get a glimpse of the tricked-out hot rod. Gazing through the rear view, he could tell the car was pale off-white, perhaps a Mustang from the 1970s. The lights swirled as hypnotically as a serpent's stare. The car kept advancing. It didn't move as if it had any intentions on stopping. Philip thought fast and just narrowly avoided a collision. As he looked over inside of the Mustang, the cab was on fire, and the driver's face was a blackened skull that smoked out of its eye sockets. Philip nearly crashed into the median. The skeletal driver opened his charred and muscleless mouth, then slammed into the side of Philip's Honda Elantra. He looked ahead, unsure just how much left he had to go before he could at the very least be free of the tunnel. Even in the best of circumstances, he didn't know if he could outrun that car. He put his foot down and screeched away. The Mustang dogged him at every step of the way. Philip spun around desperately, going the wrong way down the expressway tunnel rather than face the wrath of that thing. The unholy hot rod rolled up behind him so quickly it started to become obvious that catching up to him was never in question, which made his true motives all the more mysterious. When the muscle car slammed into his passenger side, he used the force of the blow to spin himself the other way. Philip was proud of himself for being so clever, though he didn't have time to bask in it when his rival screeched in a circle, causing a ring of fire in his wake. Philip spent more time staring in his rear view than ahead of him, and he could see the thing gaining, closing. Philip saw a flicker of daylight at the end of the tunnel, and with it, a nugget of hope. The flaming corpse closed, and the moment the jaws of death snapped to sink its teeth in him, he swerved. The maneuver gave him a little room to breathe. The light at the end of the tunnel fast approached, and the Mustang poured on the speed. Philip didn't know why he believed when he made it out this was the end of it, but it felt like a moral victory if it were nothing else. With flames nipping at his bumper, Philip pumped his fist in triumph when he crossed the threshold. When he put his eyes back on the road, he made a squealing halt, burning the road black from his tire tracks. Philip found himself back in the jumbled mess of brake lights on the expressway. He slowly drove past the flaming wreck, nearly identical to his Elantra. Philip rolled his eyes in annoyance and sped over to the emergency lane, having no time for this. A workman held a bright flare so brilliant yellow to his head it washed out the details of his face. He beckoned Philip ahead and into a lane all his own. You are now exiting Clearview, Illinois city limits. Hope you enjoyed the trip.